You're listening to iCannabisRadio.com.
They're very rare, apparently. Are you?
All right. Welcome to the Hemp Connoisseur Radio. I apologize to all of our listeners for
where's
not
mine?
being here last week. It was I was supposed to actually be at court. As always, I'm David. My guest, Sam.
Hi, I just got
My
headphones
guest,
on.
my actual co-host.
Co-host now.
My official
How dare you demote me,
co-host.
sir.
I know, you're not demoted. And then we have a special guest today. We have Joe Megacy.
Yep, very glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So before we kind of get into things, I got to give a little update on a couple things about the magazine.
Oh yeah, I was camping last week, so I also apologize for not being here. I was battling spiders and massive stomach problems. But
Ooh, really? Where'd you go camping?
I had in Idaho in Rock City.
In Idaho.
Yeah, I think it's not Rock City. I think it's called City of Rock.
Because, you know, when you live in Colorado and you think camping, you go, I got to go to Idaho.
Well, it's nice to be able to camp somewhere where you're not worried about going up in flames every 5 minutes.
Yes. Thoughts going out to Colorado Springs.
Yes.
We thought last year's fire was bad enough, but of course they wanted to one-up it. And now we're at
so
least
sad.
60 more houses destroyed than last year.
Tragic. It's just tragic.
As of right now, 360. Yesterday, I'm out delivering the magazines because a new issue came out this week, and you could smell the smoke throughout Denver. Today, the wind pattern must be a little different, so you can't smell it. But
No, it was awful. It was so smoggy yesterday.
yeah,
But no, we were rock climbing in Idaho, so that's why we're there.
again, because when you think rock
Rock
climbing,
climbing,
you need to
definitely
leave
don't
Colorado.
think Colorado.
Yeah, they say it's the most destructive fire in Colorado history, actually, in
Yes,
terms of
most,
property
as
damage.
far as property damage, most destructive. Yep. Yeah, craziness.
So hopefully the local lawmakers in Colorado Springs will maybe rethink some of their proposed bans.
Maybe
to
some of their
implement
priorities.
Amendment 64 will shift because they'll have to be paying for
Yeah.
a lot of this destruction.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's funny because that was something somebody said while I was out delivering magazines yesterday. By the way, hey, the new magazine is out, came out this week.
Oh, I love a cover.
Do you love the cover,
Did you
the
see
little
the
Reefer
cover, Joe?
Madness cover?
I haven't seen the cover
Oh,
yet.
it's
no.
We'll
great.
angle it over to you.
Oh, that's great.
It's funny because being a magazine, we're not daily. So when news changes, sometimes we're covering news, and then it goes to print, and then the news changes. And the cover was a direct response to the fact that they were going to start treating us like we were pornography.
Yes.
Officially, we won our case against the government.
Yes, as I was saying, is that when I was out of town, I happened to see a blurb, and I was, totally in this.
So big win, very exciting. It's already been covered by a lot of different newspapers around the country.
Yeah, it was great to see John Suthers, Republican Attorney General of Colorado, on the same side of High Times. And who's the main attorney? David Lane, I believe.
David Lane was our main attorney. Great constitutional attorney. Well, here's the reason why. When you sue the government, at least in Colorado, I think this actually holds true for anything. When you sue the government and you win, the government has to pay for all of your legal fees.
Yes, that's true on a federal level too, because I
Yes.
believe that when HIA sued the government back in the 2000s for the importing of hemp, when they didn't necessarily confiscate the hemp seeds that were being imported, and they turned them back to Canada, and HIA filed that infamous lawsuit, they won.
Yep.
And the government had to pay their legal fees.
So what happens is when the government looks at a suit, they go, well, do we think we can win this suit? How long will this suit last? And if we lose this suit, how much is this going to cost us? So it was actually in the Attorney General's best interest to get this case done as soon as possible. And I think they realized very quickly that there was no way that they were going to win this case. I mean, the ACLU did a suit as well with the Tattered Cover Bookstore, which is one of our distribution points. And I love the Tattered Cover Bookstore for this, and there was other bookstores that were on this as well, because they didn't have as much of an invested interest in this as the magazines did. Like the Daily Doobie was in this case with us, and then High Times jumped on as well. It's interesting because I love these bookstores for this, because they're like, no, you can't tell us where to put these magazines. And so the ACLU was on that suit, and then it was a dual lawsuit. So they were like, there's a lot of legal fees we're going to have to pay if we don't end this quickly. And so they did. They ended it quickly. We won it. And in fact, in the stipulation, they are absolutely not allowed to regulate where we distribute our magazine. So it was an awesome win for us. It's great. It's very exciting. A couple other exciting things in the magazine. Everybody needs to go pick one up in your local dispensary. We're in almost everywhere in Denver right now. If we're not there, we will be there.
For the cover art alone, the historic cover art, right?
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
You. We're proud of our covers.
I
every
like
issue.
your guys' covers.
You know, we don't do the
some
normal.
of my favorite stuff.
We don't feature like comedians and movie stars and musicians. I know that's something that's very popular, and it's something that people think, oh, that picks it up.
But you did promise that I could do like a cover shoot. Remember? Do you
did?
remember? Yeah, we were talking about like we were like really. Joe and I actually.
Joe and you were going to do the cover shoot.
That's right.
Well, I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see the concepts on these cover
It's
shoots. It'll be
the
very
hottest
interesting.
lobbyists, the hottest weed lobbyists in the country.
The hottest.
It was, I think.
Why don't we just call it the hottest Colorado hemp lobbyists?
It's true.
Although that's just you two.
That is. That's
That is
us.
pretty much just you two.
Yeah. Also, Sean. We got
yeah.
the Sean in there.
That's right.
Bone.
Right. Well, we also made the announcement that we are going to be taking early registration for the second annual Hemp Connoisseur Championship, which is going to be held this fall. So anybody out there who thinks that you know what you're talking about when it comes to tasting cannabis, edibles, concentrates, this is your time to strut your stuff, man. You guys can be judges. It costs $125 to be a judge, which is way less than the value of what you're getting because you're going to get about an ounce of the best flower in Colorado. You get or a quarter ounce of concentrates or about 30 edibles.
Now, are you just going to do, because I'm a new person.
Yeah. Ask any
are,
questions.
Are you just going to do marijuana, or are you also going to do like hemp edibles? Like maybe open it up to the hemp people who...
I want to open up to the hemp people. We're slowly, incrementally increasing this. Like we started out with like 8. We had like 8 categories last year, and we are increasing it to 13 categories. And as the popularity grows of this competition, we will be implementing hemp and different things like that. The thing about the hemp side is, first and foremost, of course, the judges are more excited about getting medicated, let's be honest.
They're not excited about nourishing their body with the most perfect protein and omega fatty acids and...
Maybe. Yeah, we will. As this grows. This is a second annual, and I'm somebody who's very systematic in the growth. Like I said, so we're slowly doing the growth on this competition. And next year, in 2014, recreational cannabis is legal, or as I like to call it, adult use. And so it will be much more opened up for judging and submissions. We're talking about doing a home growers cup as well. And so home growers can bring it in and have a bunch of experts taste and test. But we're not there yet. We make sure that we're completely legal and state compliant. And because of that, this time around, we're still just a patient's choice cup. But it's completely blind the way we do it. We don't take sponsorship dollars from dispensaries who enter. So if you're entering, you can only pay for your entry fee, submit your medicine, and that's it.
I wonder who he's referring to. Wait, what?
I'm not referring to anybody specifically, but there are competitions that have been held in the past in Colorado and around the world that people have questioned the legitimacy of who's won.
What?
Whether I believe that or not.
No.
I've just, when we decided to create
Shocking.
this. Shocking.
This is shocking.
It's amazing. We went out and we talked to all the dispensary owners here in Colorado, not all of them, but a lot of the dispensary owners here in Colorado, and said, what are your complaints about every competition that's been run before? And then we answered every single one of those complaints. So the idea behind the way we do this is, if you win this, nobody in Colorado can doubt that you deserved to win whatever category you entered into. And so that's how we're doing it. So it's going to be fun if you're a patient judge.
Until they see David driving around in his like fancy little Porsche or something like that. Like,
yeah. One thing to know is nobody from my company is allowed to be a judge. Yeah, I know. It's a bummer for us. But but anybody out there can be a judge. For $125, you're getting the best medicine Colorado has to offer. We have a wake and bake brunch for all of our patient judges, where we're going to do a little seminar series on how to test and taste your medicine. So you have a little bit of an educational opportunity, and that is going to be the same day that you pick up your medicine at the dispensary right across from where the brunch is going to be held. You get 30 days to try the medicine instead of 2, which made no sense to me, because how can you say the 4th strain you tried is better than the first one you tried if you did it just less than 20 minutes ago? So we give everybody 30 days to try it, and then we have a great awards party, a little seminar series.
I always feel the same way when they have chili cook-offs. Like if you eat like a really hot, spicy chili, how can you really...
You need a palate cleanser.
Where's the palate cleanser?
What's a
marijuana palate cleanser? CBD?
Some sorbet.
Time.
A little CBD sorbet.
Yeah, CBD would be good. But the only problem with that is if you take a CBD in, yes, it will counteract the effects of THC. But then the next strain you smoke is actually enhanced because it does the opposite. It's amazing. It's kind of like eat this mushroom to make you small, eat this one to make you bigger. And if you smoke anything with THC after you've done a CBD focused strain, it's actually stronger. So that's something people should know. CBDs will take away that effect or minimize the effects of the THC, but then THC will also enhance after you do a CBD strain. So
it really is like these testing things need to be like more marathon sessions where it's like just do 2 a day. You give your morning taste and your afternoon taste.
That's exactly right. That's why we give them 30
Yeah.
days. Because we expect, and we're hoping to get about an ounce per category for our patients. So they're looking at trying 28 grams because we give them a gram of each sample. So we say, look, you try this one today, you try this one the next day. That's why we're trying to have one day where they all pick it up, because last time we did this, we had like 3 distribution points. My patients showed up like a week before they were supposed to get their votes in for some of these, and they didn't get enough time. So we just wanted to give them more time to try everything. So anyway, check out thcmag.com. That's our website. And at the top right corner of our menu, you'll see the THC Championship, and it'll have a little drop down that says judges sign here or medicine entries right here as well. So you guys can fill out those forms, and it's on a first come, first serve basis as to what category you want to be into. All right, that's my spiel.
That's your spiel?
That's my
It's
spiel.
not technically a plug, I guess, considering this is the Hemp Connoisseur Radio.
Yeah, it's hard to. Yeah, I guess we are plug. It's shameless self-promotion.
Shameless
self-promotion.
This whole business
gotta
is
do it.
shameless, yeah.
Yeah,
Do it.
That's
So-
right. Then we're going to let Joe be a little shameless here in a second.
That's exactly right. That was, I had to get my 2 cents and get that out because I'd be really mad if I didn't mention to everybody about this, because I've already receiving phone calls. The magazine's only been out for 2 days, and I already have like 25 emails and phone calls to go through of people who want to be judges. So this is going to fill up fast. So Joe, something very interesting about you that I just learned before we started the show. You are conservative. You're Republican.
That's right.
But you are pro-cannabis.
That's right. I worked on the Amendment 64 campaign. I was a conservative outreach director. But prior to that, I have always worked for Republican either candidates or causes. I was communications director for Congressman Mike Kaufman, a Republican congressman from Colorado.
So I have an issue with both parties. I hate the two-party system, to be honest, and I love talking politics, so I love that you're here.
Oh, he loves it.
I do. What kind of a Republican are you? Because the Republican Party has kind of like changed.
It absolutely has.
It's kind of scary now where the Republican Party is because, and a perfect example is what's going on in the news right now with PRISM. You guys know what's going on with PRISM. Of course you do.
Yeah.
You're the people I should never have to ask that question to. And we have all these Republican senators and congressmen coming out and saying, oh, well, we don't have a problem with this. I mean, there's some that do, but there's some Democrats that do too. But we have a lot of them coming out that are like, oh, no, there's no issue at all with this. We have no problem with us spying on the American people. But to me, that's the exact opposite of what it means to be a Republican as far as what the definition is I grew up with. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and I think that's why the Republicans are having some of the issues they have right now about not being able to get elected nationwide, not being elected in Colorado, and it's because they've sort of strayed from a lot of their ideology. They want to be, there's a huge part of the party that wants to be big government. They want to tell people what they can do in their bedrooms. They want to, they want to spy on us, spy on their own people for what they ostensibly say are for security purposes. They want to, invade other countries and do nation building. I mean, that sort of is the antithesis. And a lot of it is a generation, how this happened was in the 70s. Richard Nixon was sort of a cynical guy and made a political decision to reach out to certain elements, the far right fundamentalists, religious fundamentalists, and build the base upon them, and it sort of just grew and grew and grew. And that segment of the Republican Party kind of has an outsized voice in where the direction the party is going now.
And we have to go to a break in a moment, so I definitely want to come back to this conversation. But I guess the question is, when you say it's an outsized voice, it's like they're a minority within the Republican Party, but for some reason they seem to have like more say, or at least more public. The public perception, or at least mine, is that they seem to be taking over the Republican Party, and I'd like to ask you if that's true, and you can answer that at the end of after the break. So,
Okay,
so we'll be right back in just a moment.
The law offices of Edson, Maiden, and Matz provide criminal defense, medical marijuana defense, and advice about setting up and running medical marijuana centers, optional premises cultivation operations, and infused product manufacturing businesses throughout Colorado. With offices in Denver and Aspen, we can offer assistance throughout the entire state of Colorado. Give us a call at 303-831-8188. That's 303-831-8188. Or visit us online at warrenedson.com.
River Rock Wellness, located at 4935 York Street and on the corner of 6th and Calumet, right next to Lamar's Donuts at 990 West 6th Avenue, offers in-house, award-winning organic medical cannabis flowers, concentrates, tinctures, topicals, edibles, and raw superfoods for all patients. Prices range from $160 to $240 an ounce, with member and non-member benefits including caregiver, SSI, SSDI, vets, travelers, and sponsored programs. With brands you trust like Healthy Creations, Rare Dankness, Rock Butter, Priva, Token Daily, and more. Become a River Rock patient or renew with us today and receive a $100 ounce of choice. Offer good through April 20th, 2013.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
All right, we're back with the Hemp Connoisseur Radio. As always, I'm David, and joined by my new and lovely co-host, Samantha Walsh.
Oh, thank you.
And then we have our guest, Joe Megacy, here today. And, I asked you a question right before we left, because we were talking about how the Conservative Party's kind of changed, and you were saying how there's this small minority in the Conservative Party that seems to have a bigger voice than they really deserve. And I was going to, and I think, what was my exact question, I think, at the end? It was...
Why is the smaller voice taking over the party at large?
Right.
Why is the minority controlling the majority of the Republican Party?
Well, I mean, I think it's because that minority is very well organized, and they have a very good message, and they're able to turn out voters for a lot of their mega churches and otherwise, and so they are an element that many Republicans are afraid to.
Because they win primaries.
Because they win primaries.
That's what it is. They win primaries, but then you put these Republican candidates in very awkward positions where they've had to steer very far right during primaries, and then suddenly they're up against centrist Democrats, and they have to suddenly pivot.
But there's also a really strong growing minority within the party now, and it's sort of the libertarian wing of the party.
I was just going to say, I mean, really, to be a true conservative or a true Republican to me now means you're a libertarian.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I think the libertarians are actually... This is I've had this theory for a while that the Republican Party is going to go through a very ugly but necessary divorce.
I would agree.
You're going to have, I think what'll happen is the libertarians will split off the traditional, your Reagan Republicans. I always said Reagan Democrats. Yeah, slip of the tongue. Your Reagan Republicans are going to, your old establishment GOP, the deal makers of the party, are going to suddenly become comfortable again with a little bit of the religious conservatives. And then the libertarians are doing what they're doing now, which is peeling off a lot of liberals. You have the Glenn Greenwalds of our party who are pissed off at the Democrats. And so, who think that we aren't liberal enough, aren't progressive enough, aren't, too true to our ideals. They're starting to become this louder voice in the liberal and Democrat party. And so I think they'll peel them off. And I think we'll have, a lot of people don't agree with me, but I think we'll have a viable third independent libertarian
I think we're going to
party.
end up with more than that, actually. I mean, the way I'm looking at the Republican Party right now, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on this, Joe, is it's starting to be as disorganized in a way as the Democrats. The Democrats, they never got their shit together. I mean, at least in the last 20 years, it was kind of like, well, we think this. And part of it was one of the things I liked about the Democratic Party. I'm an independent, but it was like, well, there's so many varying degrees, and they're willing to argue with each other. And for a while, the Republican Party was so lockstep with each other. And now you're seeing this division, and we don't know how to grow. We have this Tea Party side and all this. So it's almost like both parties are fighting with each other as far as what direction they want to go. The Democrats, I think, are long overdue for finding a way to get organized, honestly. But it's interesting to see that the Republicans are having that issue.
No, and I agree with you. I think out of that disorganization, we're going to see something good happen. I don't know if it's going to be as tumultuous as Sam thinks and was splitting off to a third party, but I do think that these groups are going to come together and learn to work together more. And then, the social conservatives will be willing to give a little bit more, maybe in terms of gay marriage. and some other issues that they care about. Probably not abortion, that's a bigger issue, but some other issues that they care about, they'd be willing to compromise a bit more. Libertarians might be able to compromise more on some things, and they're going to have to come together and work towards compromise if they ever want to be in power. Because at the end of the day, the minority party does not legislate, and there's really no point to politics or government unless you're in power.
Well, do you feel like again, I have issues with both parties, but since you're a Republican, we're going to talk about the Republican Party. Do you feel like the Republican Party, in a way, has kind of sold their soul, oh, no pun intended, actually, until I said that, to the religious right to get the primary vote? Because now it's confusing the issue. Because like you said, it's all about less government, but then as soon as you try to get that religious right vote,
you can't have a small government.
You can't have a small
social
government.
Social conservative.
Exactly.
I don't know if it's sold their soul, but they've become so dependent on them in these last cycles, and that they feel like they're so necessary in winning elections that they are dependent on them a lot. I don't know if they would sell their soul is the right way to describe it, but they certainly are dependent on them. And it's not that I'm not also I don't also take the belief that the Republicans need to excise social conservatives from the party. They just need to work with them better, and we need to talk. Republicans need to talk about those issues in a more compassionate way.
And marijuana is one of those issues.
Yeah, it is. Marijuana legalization is a compassionate issue. We have a system now that people are being arrested and having their whole lives negatively affected because they choose to use a different substance. A substance that's objectively less harmful than alcohol. So I think it is compassionate.
And how do you win over the social conservative Republicans to the marijuana side? The ones who like literally when they hear, because I see it in message boards, I hear it. Oh, those dirty druggies, all they want to do is smoke their pot, the soccer moms.
Well, I think a lot of it's a generational thing, and I think you see that in the Democratic Party, too. Old Democrats are certainly most old Democrats are not in favor of marijuana legalization either. I would say a lot of them are not either, and it's a generational thing. I remember looking at a poll, it was probably close to a year ago now, where young social conservatives, young people who are identified as Christian fundamentalists, et cetera, there was a huge chunk of them that favored marijuana legalization policies. So I think largely it's a generational thing.
Right. Well, I think there's actually two things that have changed the tide as we've been going through this. And, we've all been in this for a while now. We've seen it change. But I think there's two major things that change. It's education and time. Really it is. We educate the people that didn't know and that were misinformed for the past, 80 years. But it's also time, because over time, and I think the gay issue is the same thing. At some point, whether you're Republican or not, you're going to meet somebody who's gay. You're going to meet somebody and find out, wow, or have a son or daughter who's gay and go, wait a minute, why am I trying to limit my family's right to have the same, life that I have? And the same thing with the marijuana side. When you look at it as the medicine, you're going to meet somebody, or you're going to have somebody in your family who is benefiting from medical marijuana. And that's why I think we passed on 64 here. We're a purple state here. Mm-hmm. We've been leaning more blue lately, but there was a lot of conservatives that voted to legalize marijuana. And I think the basis of that was partly the small government side, but partly because they had a family member that they saw affected by this. Yeah.
Well, Joe was instrumental in getting Tom Tancredo on the marijuana train.
Well, you got to tell us about this experience, Joe. Because, for those of you who just tuning in, Joe was our conservative outreach for the Amendment 64 campaign. And I have to say, that's probably one of the hardest jobs out of the Amendment 64 campaign. You
have no idea. By the middle of October, I was so tired of being just vilified at every Republican meeting across the state and being shouted down and yelled at and called a drug dealer and all sorts of awful things.
Were you really called a drug dealer?
I was called a drug dealer at a couple places. Wow. The red meat areas of Colorado, definitely.
Wow. That's amazing.
So I was pretty tired of it, but it was a great experience. And I got to work with former Congressman Tom Tancredo.
So tell us about that, because you changed his mind.
He was sort of on board, but he had sort of, he had favored that sort of policy, but he was very apprehensive about being public about it. And, the more I talked about it with him, he realized, this is a big issue. And I think one of the biggest turning points was the power, taking away power from the drug cartels south of the border. That's been border security and violence down there has been one of his big issues all along. And I think that was really what pushed him over, was saying, hey, why don't we take this trade and regulation of this substance away from the drug cartels and put it in the hands of legitimate businesses? Mm-hmm. And I think that's finally what really pushed him over to come out full force in support of Amendment 64.
How many politicians would you posit? Because I feel like when it comes to Democrats, and there's just some personal experience that, while you say older, like it's a generational thing, but I also think that a lot of Democrats behind closed doors, at least from my personal experience, behind closed doors, the Gary Newsoms of the world will say, yeah, legalize it, just tax it. I don't care. That's just Democrats, and Gary Newsom happens to be one of the few politicians who's actually now coming out in front of this issue and saying, coming out of the closet, we'll say. So how many Republicans would you say are in the closet with marijuana versus they really just are ideologically opposed and have to be kind of educated on it?
I don't know. It's hard to say, but I definitely say there's a good chunk of them as well that are just worried about the political consequences. That if they come out and say publicly that they believe marijuana should be legalized and taxed and regulated, that they're going to have trouble when they go back to the ballot box in the fall. There's probably more Republicans than Democrats that are in that closet situation.
I doubt it.
But I don't know. I don't know either.
No, I would agree. I mean,
I don't know. I think it's more of a blue progressive issue. It's a social issue. I never got called drug dealer.
Yeah.
Well, not by anyone you guys know, but I'm sure.
At least not when you weren't dealing drug. No, just kidding. Yeah.
Exactly. And those were my older days. No, don't do that anymore. Sometimes I do. Hit me up if you need anything.
There you go. Yeah, her number is 555. No, just kidding. So interesting. So now, after 64 passed, what was your next step? I mean, you started working on the hemp side?
No, I didn't do any hemp side, actually. I was hired by the Marijuana Policy Project, which is, one of the main backers of Amendment 64. It's a group out of D.C. who's dedicated to seeing marijuana policy change across the nation. They're pursuing a number of activities currently, either going to ballot initiative process like we did here in Colorado, or affecting change through state legislatures. Actually, they've had some success in some of the campaigns they're working on. Just yesterday, Nevada signed a bill to set up the dispensary model, much like we had here in 2009, I believe it was, in Colorado. So they're going to have a more robust infrastructure for medical marijuana patients.
Are they looking at Colorado as like the model to like the blueprint to
I
work
think
off
they
of?
are. I think they must be, because Colorado is sort of the gold standard for that.
I would agree. I think there's still too many states out there that think that they can reinvent the wheel.
Sure.
I mean, it's Massachusetts being one of them, and that's my home state. And I'm just like, what are you guys doing? Do you have any idea of the population of your state? And you're limiting it to what, 30 dispensaries? I think it is, or something like that. I mean, it's insane.
It's crazy.
It is. So it's nice to see that there's a state out there that's like using their brain and going, hey, this has been working for these guys. Maybe we should build on that, instead of going, we can do it better than those guys in Colorado.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So is there any specific ballot initiatives across the country that you're working on?
No, not at the moment. There's one in Alaska. We'll see where it comes through. I don't know how that develops in Alaska. It's the only one that's going to be on the ballot in 2014.
It is. It's the only one that's on the ballot
for full legals at this point.
For fully, it's Alaska. I'm pretty sure that's like almost like I'm going to spend $100 on that campaign and it's going to pass. They don't care.
So then I worked for the Marijuana Policy Project and also Vicente Cederberg law firm, another great law firm. And Sam and I represented the Marijuana Policy Project down at the state capitol as they move forward to implement Amendment 64.
Awesome. Well, we have to go on a break real quick, but I want to come back and talk about what you guys have been working on now. And thanks for listening. We'll be right back.
Let's face it, rules and regulations are complicated, especially in the field of medical marijuana. Let Medical Marijuana 101 help you get through the compliance process. We can also explain to you your employment requirements, your employees, and your business. But our work doesn't stop there. Our experience in cultivation ranges from the design of grow rooms to the diagnosis and resolution of grow problems. Visit us at www.medicalmarijuana101.com or call 303-388-7706. That's 303-388-7706. Are you a runner? Are you a runner who supports marijuana legalization? Run on Grass is a group of athletes actively seeking to change our marijuana laws. We speak the truth about cannabis, bringing the message through our feet to new ears. Check out runongrass.com to find out more about us, our events, and how to join up or how to sponsor a runner. If you're in the Denver area, please join us for runs or start a group in your area. Running not your thing? Any sport can do it. On grass. Runongrass.com.
The National Cannabis Industry Association would like to thank its members who represent the leading professional businesses in America's emerging legal cannabis market. NCIA is the only organization that has unified legitimate cannabis business across the nation to fight for real reform in Washington, D.C. For more information or to make your business a member, visit us online at thecannabisindustry.org.
All right, we are back with the lovely Samantha Walsh. That's going to be your new name. The lovely.
I like
Samantha
it.
Walsh.
I like it.
And Joe Megacy, conservative outreach for Amendment 64 lobbyist, I should say. That was all out of order, but that's all right. And
all right.
we were kind of talking about what you guys worked on as far as at the Capitol for the Amendment 64 legislation. So what were you? I know what you were focused on, but you can let's talk.
Well,
about it
I obviously did both. I had my hemp clients and then the marijuana policy project. But we can focus on the marijuana aspect since we have Joe here. I was sort of a Democrat strategist, and he was a Republican strategist, although I think a lot of times we ended up flipping some of that role.
Did you really?
Yeah, I like a lot of the Republican people. They're fun to hang out with.
Yeah.
I've always said they're more fun to party with, I think, than Democrats.
Really?
Yeah.
See, you would always think that would be opposite. You know, I mean, as far as like public perception, like, the liberals, they party it up. And then, but
I don't know. A lot of times that public perception throws you for a loop.
All I know is every time there's a scandal, if it's a Republican scandal, it is freaky.
Yeah.
It is. A Democrat, you're like, yeah, whatever. So
It's
an
the
intern,
repression factor.
whatever. Yeah, it's like you're holding it back, and then you're just like, you let it out, and you're just like, wow, that was crazy. You did what with a melon? What?
Yeah. So we lobbied at the Capitol mostly about implementing the regulations, the taxing structure, and worked on a lot of the decriminalization bills, and to make sure a lot of that just went smoothly. I mean, our main objective was to make sure that that 54% of Coloradans, viewpoint was represented, and that main viewpoint was that they just wanted reasonable and sensible legislation passed.
So, next question: how successful do you think you were after looking at the structure of 1317, House Bill 1317, which has the regulatory framework? Is there anything in there that you're like, God, we really did not win out on that argument? Are there other aspects on the flip side where you're like, wow, we really?
I think he's
beat it
hinting
out?
at the magazine.
No, I'm not, because that's a moot point. That's a moot point as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But what other aspects are ones that you still are like, God, I really wish we could have another crack at that one, and then what do you think were your best successes with it?
I mean, there's a lot of issues in there that are going to need to be fixed and tinkered with throughout the years. But look, we've been tinkering with alcohol legislation, alcohol regulation for over 80 years. I mean, so this is not going to be something that's going to go away. You're constantly going to be in there futzing with it.
Yeah, I always tell people it was never going to be perfect. I think sometimes we're dealing with you're obviously dealing with an industry that is very neophyte. And new when it comes to working within the system, within a regulated system. And there was very high expectations that when it came out, it was going to be exactly what everybody wanted. And that's It never is. They always say a good compromise is when everybody walks away unhappy.
Exactly.
Which I think sort of was what happened.
I think so too.
But yeah, exactly. It's like what Joe said. We're every year it's going to be a struggle and it's going to be a fight. I know you and I have talked about this before, and so I think it's important that as a community and as an industry, we learn to group together and focus outward. Not focus inward. And I think a lot of these industry and business, inside battles, a lot of the scar tissue needs to be mended. And I think we need to realize that we have a lot of people who are fighting against us still. I mean, this is a small battle. Like I say this all the time. This is going to be probably what I harp on the most. And to sit there and think that there aren't prohibitionists out there constantly who want to take this down, who want to repeal Amendment 64. When we dealt with the repeal, that was probably the most exciting part.
And the prohibitionists are totally unscrupulous. They'll go to any they'll take
right.
any length to get what they want. They just believe that the means justify the ends.
Oh, like limiting free speech?
Yeah, I have an interesting story about this magazine ban.
Please,
Actually, a reporter for a very reputable national organization was covering this as it was going through the courts last week. And she said they sent a photographer to the Tattered Cover bookstore to get some pictures of High Times and other magazines there. And the photographer's looking around, and eventually he asked the clerk, he's like, "Do you guys sell High Times?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, sure, we sell High Times." He's like, "But we don't keep it out because they kept getting stolen."
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they keep it behind the counter. So I thought that was really interesting because originally the people that pushed this magazine ban at the state capitals are a group called Smart Colorado, or the
smart
anything
mommies.
the smart mommies. And one of the most prominent smart mommies, Gina Carboni, got up in front of a committee and told a story how she was in a 7-Eleven. And she was bringing there to get her kids Slurpees.
It's the most convenient story ever for her point. It's amazing.
And she turned around, and when her kids were drinking Slurpees, they were reading a High Times magazine. Well, it turns out after I heard this story about the tattered cover that they keep behind the counter, I went to a couple 7-Elevens to see.
None of them carry it there.
None of them carry it out front. There is nothing there. So, it just shows that these people will tell stories, will say anything that they want to keep marijuana illegal.
And I said that from the beginning because, it was that the first time that her story came out that I saw was on the same Channel 9 news story that they interviewed me, and I didn't know that she was involved in this until I saw the actual piece that they did after the editing. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, first of all, I was a professional actor for a long time. I still do it occasionally. And I can tell when somebody's not telling the truth.
Are you guys calling Gina Carboni a liar? Joe?
You know
David?
what? I can say that I think she's an outright liar. And here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. It's one of two things. Either she's a liar, or if it's true, it's her fault. Because she has demonized marijuana so much that her son is picking up a High Times magazine on the slide to try to get as much information about it as he can. Because she's demonized it and made it forbidden fruit. That's her fault as a parent, in my opinion. So if it's true, do a better job of parenting there, miss. And if it's false, what the hell? You're lying. Either way, as far as I'm concerned, she looked bad.
Yeah,
and all I can say is either way, you know what? She lost. Because, don't try to take away our rights.
Are you spiking the football right now?
I am spiking the football right now. It was funny because I said it on the Huffington Post Live when they interviewed us, and that was like the one quote they kept on for it. And it was like, owner of the Hemp Connoisseur magazine tells Gina Carboni, if you want to educate your son, have him pick up our magazine. Because I said pretty much that. I was like, well, if you don't want to spend the time to explain what a vaporizer is, because that's what she said. I shouldn't have to explain what a vaporizer is to my son. And I was like, so you shouldn't be a parent? What do you kidding me? So I was like, well, then have him pick up our magazine. We'll educate him. That's what we're here for.
Yes, I love it.
I know. And as you made the comparison earlier to gay rights, it's the same issue. A lot of these parents say, "Oh, I don't want to have to explain to my kid why two men are holding hands down the street."
Then don't have a kid.
Then don't have a kid if you want to have these conversations. Exactly.
Your job as a parent is to illuminate your child to the real world.
I'm like the opposite. I encourage Riley to. I'm like, ask me about the gays because I love them, and I just love it.
But here's the thing: is parents like you who, when you answer those questions, when you answer any question your child asks you, it's no longer a big deal. I mean, you explain to a child, oh, well, you can explain to a 6-year-old what homosexuality is, and they'll just be like, oh, okay, that's what it is.
Yeah.
They're not like, oh, there's something wrong there.
No,
the wrongness is something you put into it.
I'm a terrible parent because I'm honest to a fault.
That's not being
I caused
terrible.
my child to be a vegetarian because I told him where meat came from.
Nothing wrong with that.
I know. It came from cow. I was like, oh, you eat. It was a funny story because we were at Maggiano's, which I probably shouldn't have mentioned that if they're not going to pay us, but whatever. I ordered him some calamari, and he'd eaten it before, and he's like, well, what is this? What is this? I'm like, oh, you've eaten it before, you like it, but it's squid. Well, what's squid? Well, squid's an animal that lives in the ocean. Mom, I don't want to eat animals. You eat animals all the time. What do you think hamburger is? And he just gets all wide-eyed, and he goes, well, what's hamburger? And I go, it's cows. And knowing I should have probably shut up at that point. And he got very sad because, the Chick-fil-A cow was his friend. He was like 5 at the time. And he goes, I don't want to eat cows, Mom. And I go, okay, well, you don't have to eat cows. That's a vegetarian. That's a very viable lifestyle choice. You can do that. I'm not going to talk you out of it. That's what you want to try. Figuring that he would give up after like a week withdrawal of no chicken nuggets or something. And no, he stuck to it for like 6 months. So,
But he broke?
He broke. It wasn't me. It was it was external forces of other family members who were freaking out that he wasn't getting enough protein. And if you can see him through the window over there playing your video games, he's 7 feet tall. So trust me, the child was getting fed very well in his vegetarian stage.
Well, I'm imagining he had plenty of hemp protein.
Oh no! Yeah. Really good. We had solid tofu and hemp, and he's a growing kid, and yeah. And so, I think parents just be honest. What's the worst that happens? Your child grows up knowing things.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. Forbid. Except for Santa Claus. Don't be honest about that stuff.
Well,
because that's an amazing blackmail tool. I'll never give that up until it's ripped from my cold, dead hands. Oh, I'm a terrible parent. No.
I was just like, you can't
hear out there.
I was just making sure. You didn't want to just
I think he suspects already.
Well, how old is he now?
8.
That's when you start.
It's about that age.
He lost a tooth early, a few weeks ago, and wrote a letter to the tooth fairy demanding photographic evidence of her existence. And
oh wow!
Yeah.
So he's getting to that point.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. I remember as a child, I think I was around 8 that I discovered that there was no Santa Claus because we found an Atari. That's how old I am. We found an Atari under my parents' bed
You're
before
as old
Christmas.
As us, then.
Yeah. So because we were playing, my brother and I were playing hide and seek, and I looked under the bed, and there's an Atari there, and I was all excited. And then that Christmas, it said from Santa Claus, and I'm like, oh, there's no Santa. And I was like, well, I don't want to tell my parents I know that because I felt like I got extra presents. I got presents from my parents. I got presents from Santa. So I kept the secret for a couple of years. So while you're lying to, about Santa, I guarantee you it's going to be flipped on you for at least a year or so where he's just going to act like he doesn't know.
Just brings into my new parenting strategies that I'm going to have to come up with.
See, it's nice to turn the tables on your parents when you learn that.
I knew that was in the Santa 5 years ago.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. We're sure he can't hear, right? Yeah, he's not.
We're very. You're right. Right. Yeah, he can't. Okay. He's in the ball crying right now. No, he can't hear it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but that's.
But no. The prohibitionists, for example, I can actually.
Thanks for bringing us back. By the way,
actually,
I
can bring this back around. I had gotten during the High Times Cup. There's all these T-shirts floating around. I had gotten a few. Riley size, and one of them happened to have a marijuana leaf that said ganja farmer. And I thought, oh, that's cute. It has to do with hemp a little bit. To me, I was thinking hemp, even though it says ganja on it, whatever. It's just a leaf, and it said farmer on it. And it's big. I don't let him wear it to school or anything like that because I don't want to have him have to turn. I do think that would be inappropriate for school as much as wearing an alcohol T-shirt, a Budweiser T-shirt to school would be, but he's wearing it just outside to play in. It was figured it's a free T-shirt, and he's like, "Oh, Mom, kids are saying that this is a bad shirt and that I shouldn't be wearing it." So that was a nice opportunity to have a discussion, and I said, "It's not a bad shirt. It's just that's something that adults do, and it's also a plant that people grow. So if people want to talk to me, your mother, about what a plant is, I'm more than happy to have that conversation with them."
I love educating people on hemp. I have a neighbor a couple houses down from me. I live in this weird Mayberry town. I live in Edgewater, Colorado, and it's a great little town. And on my block, we all know each other. We're all friends. We all in each other's business and everything. But one of my neighbors, she has 3 kids. And, I gave her one of our hemp T-shirts because she saw me wearing one. She's like, "Oh, I love that." So I bring it over. And, of course, she has, I think, a 10-year-old daughter, very intelligent girl. And she's like, "Mom, what's hemp?" And, of course, it has a little cannabis leaf on there. And you could see and she's a cool mom. She's one of those moms that tells her everything. But she didn't know how to explain it. And she just kind of and she looked to me. And I just was like, oh, it's this great plant that it does all these things, and I explained all of that, and I was like, and it creates fabric and all these things. It's a really cool plant. And she just looked at me. She's like, oh wow, that's exactly what I was hoping somebody would say to her and explain it, But she talked to me about it because she says, well, because she medicates, and she's like, but I don't tell my daughter this. And I was like, but your daughter knows you drink, right? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, why is that different?
It's kind of a struggle, I think. I have that
is.
same struggle about, I mean, you see parents who smoke cigarettes, and it's no big deal. I mean, they probably don't smoke it right around their children, and I hope people don't smoke cigarettes right around their children.
No, I see it all the time. Drives me
And
crazy.
I
I
know.
mean, if I'm one of those people if I'm smoking a cigarette and I'm walking down the street and there's a woman walking with a baby or a child, I'm like moving over to the side. I'm putting the cigarette like away because I'm like, I'm not gonna subject your child to any secondhand smoke, as little as it might be. It's just like trying to be, to me, it's just being polite.
Yeah. I mean, I have the same struggles. And I think that's sort of where the social conservatives are probably worried, right, Joe? That
it's interesting. I have another interesting Gina Carboni story.
Oh, yes.
And we were
Yes.
talking about, where I was from. She found out I was conservative and was interested in that. We were talking about where I was from and where I grew up. And I said, I grew up in the Denver area and blah, blah, blah. She asked me where I went to school. And we were talking, I went to 13 years of Catholic school. And she goes, I'm Catholic too. My kids go to a Catholic school, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, well, you're a Catholic. You were raised Catholic. Aren't you supposed to be a good drinker and not a pot smoker?
She said that.
She said that. So it just showed that she didn't really have any problem with substance abuse, but just marijuana. Drinking is fine, but she just didn't like marijuana.
So let's pick a substance that kills 2.9 million people a year over the one that has never killed anybody.
Oh, look at
It's
you bring it
insanity.
around.
I love it.
I love it.
Yeah. It's amazing that the hypocrisy that a lot of these prohibitionists have,
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. You hear that, like John Boner is famous for loving the sauces, from my understanding,
And cigarettes.
And cigarettes.
Is that why he's so red-faced?
He has a tanning
course.
bed.
Well, but I
He has a
know.
tanning
He's got
bed.
the, like, kind of...
If you get that red bulbous nose, you're
He
a
looks like
drinker,
he gets the beer sweats, the alcohol sweats.
He
I think.
does
Doesn't
look like he gets
the
that.
alcohol sweats
or
a
it's the
little bit?
Scotch sweats.
Yeah.
I think he's a Scotch drinker. I don't know, but I'm guessing you look at him, you go, you drink Scotch.
Scotch, yeah.
Definitely. Well, we got to go on a break, our final break, and then we'll be back in just a moment.
Independent Records and Videos has been your locally owned and operated choice for music, movies, and lifestyle accessories since 1978. Independent Records and Videos has 7 locations from Denver to Colorado Springs to Pueblo to serve your entertainment needs. Whether it's vinyl, CDs, DVDs, books, smoking accessories, or hundreds of other fun and fanciful items, Independent is ready and waiting to make your dreams come true. We are always buying, selling, and trading vinyl, CDs, books, and DVDs, so sell yours and buy ours. Independent Records and Videos, your entertainment headquarters. Check us out at beindependent.com or on Facebook.
River Rock Wellness, located at 4935 York Street and on the corner of 6th and Calumet, right next to Lamar's Donuts at 990 West 6th Avenue, offers in-house, award-winning organic medical cannabis flowers, concentrates, tinctures, topicals, edibles, and raw superfoods for all patients. Prices range from $160 to $240 an ounce, with member and non-member benefits including caregiver, SSI, SSDI, vets, travelers, and sponsored programs. With brands you trust like Healthy Creations, Rare Dankness, Rock Butter, Priva, Token Daily, and more. Become a River Rock patient or renew with us today and receive a $100 ounce of choice. Offer good through April 20th, 2013.
Green Faith Ministry is for spiritual guidance, MMJ information, and networking combined with compassionate care on the way to enlightenment with all Green Faith sacraments. Green Faith provides charity assistance, including medical and food throughout the year. Contact them at greenfaithministry.com.
All right, we're back. And you know what? We were talking during the break about something that Samantha and I talked about 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
About one of my favorite topics of conversation, which is politics as well, but it was more specifically the fact that I feel like nothing's really going to change in our government until we fix campaign finance reform. And so it was a perfect conversation because we, Samantha asked you, Joe, what do you feel about it, or do you agree with it? And you kind of said no, but I want you to elaborate that in more detail.
We have to think about the unintended consequences of reforming that as well. I mean, for instance, Amendment 64 was financed by a group of, the relatively small donors across the country. They spent about $2.5 million to pay for it. Mm-hmm. With campaign finance, you'll restrict that sort of thing. These were not, industrial fat cats that came in to pass Amendment 64. These were just sort of regular concerned activists that wanted to see social change.
Well, what if it's just public financing for candidate elections?
That's what my thought process is public financing for
when you have
candidates.
people regulating things, it shouldn't be fair that they have
I mean, I guess
financial interest.
that boils down to whether you trust, big government to pay for elections, or if you trust big corporations. I mean, I think either situation probably has the.
I'd rather trust big government.
I would actually rather trust big government because if
that spies on you and kills people, kills Americans with drones, and has a lot of weapons.
Because big
but wait a minute.
corporations don't kill people.
Let's talk about that
because
though.
They don't spy on
But
us
who's
either?
supplying those drones? Private industry, and we are driven by a military-industrial complex right now, which is driven by not by public financing, but by private financing to our government. So, in my opinion, personally, and I said this last time, I really think that nothing really changes for the people of this country until we publicly finance it. I think it's going to cost us less than it costs us now. If we actually are paying for it, it's going to cost us less than taxpayer dollars. All of a sudden, we have a military budget that's not twice as much as every other major country combined. I mean, it's like maybe we can spend, get rid of a couple of, jet planes, and now all of a sudden we have, better public schools. We get rid of a couple more jet planes that we don't need, and next thing you know, we have healthcare for almost every American. It's to me that's what would be changed is because right now, when I look at the government, I look at them not paying attention to us at all. Perfect example is what recently happened with gun regulations. When you look at the NRA, how many members of the NRA? 1.5, 2 million people out of 350 million Americans. And when you looked at the polling of Americans, most of them wanted common sense gun regulations, but yet the NRA still won on that battle. So who are they really helping? They're not helping the people. They're helping this small public and private interest group. And to me, that's part of public finance.
I mean, you could say the same thing about marijuana activists.
You can, and I think I think that's a good point.
I don't know, because the last national polling was 52% of Americans want to see change in marijuana laws towards decriminalization and legalization.
I mean, there's also a large number of polls that people favor gun rights as well.
Yeah, but 90% were in favor of background checks, and even background checks failed.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the sensible. When it comes to sensible, I mean,
that's what I mean, sensible. And we can argue the nuances of it, but come on, let's see. A background check for a gun is not asking too much, especially when it's funny to me when you have Republicans saying, "Well, we can't do these background checks because we don't want to, get into people's business." But it's completely okay to listen to their phone conversations and emails and read into all their emails.
I know, it's crazy.
It is crazy to me. And to me, it's like, well, you're not really saying, back to the beginning of the conversation today, you're not talking about small government anymore. You're talking about, to me, that's a special interest conversation there. It's like, well, the NRA gives me a lot of money, so I'm going to go for what the NRA says. The people aren't giving me the money. The NRA is.
Yeah.
A lot of campaign finance, a lot of the court decisions have hinged around First Amendment rights and free speech rights. And there is this notion that, money and donations of money is an expression of free speech. And although, and as unfortunate as it is that corporations have more money to spend to, quote unquote, express their free speech, the flip side of that is if we tamp those down, it makes it harder for people to gather together and have an associative free speech, expression of free speech. People who want to change marijuana laws, for instance, or maybe in the future changing how we treat animals, animal rights. That's going to take a grassroots effort. People getting together, maybe with the backing of some wealthy donors.
Well, and I understand. Marijuana Policy Project is a nonprofit. To me, that's different on the speech side. You can't have it both ways, in my opinion. Because if I'm a private company, I can limit my employees' rights compared to what the government allows. For example, in Colorado, legal to smoke marijuana, illegal. Not illegal, but if I want to work for certain companies in Colorado, I'm not allowed to smoke it because that company can limit my rights. So if that company can limit my rights, why do they get the same rights I get? Why are they allowed to have freedom of speech with their cash and their capital that I don't get, but yet they can also, they could decide to be a fascist style company and say, well, if you want to work for us, this is how you have to live your life. To me, that doesn't gel well with me. It's not even across the board.
Yeah, I get what David's saying. It's an equity thing. If you're going to consider a corporation a person, they should be held to the same criminal liabilities. I mean, for example, here's actually a great thing that we can bring this back to marijuana. I think recently there was a huge, I think it I could have the numbers wrong here, but it was like $80 million was decided against Walgreens because they were letting OxyContin and other dangerous prescription drugs slip out the door. And if that was an individual selling marijuana, they would be in jail for 10 years. They wouldn't just get slapped on the wrist with a fine.
Yeah.
And yet somehow this big corporation can sell drugs, break the law, and they get a fine. And everyone else gets sentenced to jail time when they do that kind of things on an individual level. And I think that's sort of where the equity comes in.
Well, and I think it's also, you talk about corporate responsibilities. I mean, when you look at a company like Enron, and yes, some of those guys went to jail, nice little white-collar prison and all that. When you take away pensions of thousands, tens, 20,000 people, you've affected a huge amount of people. But yet you can go to jail for 10, 15, 20 years maybe. But if certain places, for possession, you're going to jail for longer.
Yeah, or if you broke into thousands of people's home, you'd be in jail for like 70 years.
Right.
If you stole $1,000 for each of those people, but somehow if you steal the money,
retirement.
If you steal it through like retirement funds and you just kind of switch money around somehow, here's your slap on the wrist, go to jail for like 6 years.
Yeah, or financial institutions that break laws, they get slapped on the wrist and they can still give out bonuses. I mean, I know these are common liberal mantras sometimes, but it's just, to me, it's the same across the board. Whether you're a liberal company or not, if you're doing something wrong, those people need to be held accountable. And I think that it's just not fair to say that you have freedom of speech because you have money. Well, that means that you have more speech than I do.
That's true. I get that. I mean, I think it's inequitable how it's set up, and I'm of the mindset that I'm distrusting of big government, big corporations.
Oh, I am too.
Big labor unions, any of them. I mean, any of these
Why
big
are you looking at me when you say that, Joe?
big institutions have the ability to subjugate the free will of people.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm against all of them.
Just recently, I don't know if you saw this. There was a guy who went undercover for PETA. You guys know PETA, and they're a little crazy sometimes. We'll be honest, but their heart is in the right place.
Yeah, I've seen some of those undercover videos.
Right,
yeah.
And so they go undercover. There's one guy who worked for, I think it was a chicken farm or some slaughterhouse, and they show.
I can't watch this stuff. That's not going to make me a vegetarian.
Right, and they show these videos of the slaughterhouse, and to me, I think that he's providing a valuable service because he's educating people as to what's being done with your food.
Yeah.
And to me, the FDA is doing an absolutely horrible job across the board.
No doubt.
Yeah.
But then they come out and they say, oh, well, we're going to make it like illegal for these kind of videos to get out. Well, that's not serving the public. That's serving the corporations. But yet, so corporations have this freedom of speech and all this, but yet they get to limit people actually being able to be whistleblowers on them that are providing services. I mean, if people saw how chickens are being stored in all these farmhouses, in all these chicken houses, or how some cattle are being treated.
Damn it, you guys. Now I'm going to become a vegetarian because I've seen some of this stuff on Facebook.
Well, and if you haven't watched, perfect, a great documentary,
Yeah.
Food Inc. If anybody has not seen that, I definitely recommend seeing it because you can see how it's done right and how it's being done badly too. And it makes no sense, honestly. I know this is like a total tangent, but it's part of this
I tried to bring this back around to drugs with the whole pharmacy
Well,
thing.
we don't always have to talk about drugs.
I mean, not drugs. You know what I meant? I tried to bring it back to the cannabis
Yeah,
plant.
but you know what? Cannabis people are people that want to hear about all of these types of issues. And that's one of the things I love about it, and that's one of the things we try to focus on the magazine. Is like, look, we're going to talk about hemp, we're going to talk about marijuana, but one of the things we're going to start doing is we're going to start talking about the environment, and because that's people, in what's moving forward, what's moving backwards.
Yeah.
It's all connected. And if you're somebody who wants to legalize marijuana across the board, you're probably somebody who's very interested in how our animals are being treated. On top of that, you're very interested in what we're doing to move
LGBT
forward.
rights. You're very interested in.
No, I think that's what everyone's
privacy
looking
rights,
for. I think that's why these sort of movements are catching on with young people, because it's getting back in touch with the natural world. And that's should be our real identity, is things that are with nature. And we have become this point where we're completely defined by all these different corporations or whatever. We think our identity is on a Facebook profile or on what people are doing and saying on television and music. And we have to come back and say, these other things, these fundamental things that make us human, that's what our identity here is on this world.
Well, and one of my theories on the cannabis side, I mean, there's the drug war, and that makes money for people, backdoor bribes and all that. And yeah, I get that's one of the reasons why prohibition has been around for so long. I actually think one of the undercurrents of the drug war and why marijuana has been illegal for so long is actually because cannabis smokers question authority.
Yeah.
And the more cannabis smokers there are out there, the more citizens are going to question authority. And if I was in the government, I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't want to be questioned on every turn. And I think that you're going to start seeing that kind of a movement going on the more we legalize it around the country. And it's one of those tides that I think you can't stop anymore. And I think they're kind of like, well, you can slow it down, but it's going to happen. And then I'm really interested in seeing what happens 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when every state's legal. What is the consciousness of the people of the United States going to move towards?
It's going to be interesting.
It is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
One giant smoke out. Is that what you're looking for?
No, I'm not. I'm looking for more stimulating political conversations. That's what I'm looking for.
I love it.
I'm looking for more people to go, well, okay, we've legalized marijuana. Now what? Because, that's a success. It's a win. Once you get that win under your belt, I was in sales for a long time as well. And, the first sale is the hardest one to get. But once you get that first sale, you're like, oh, well, now I have success. Now I can go get another sale, and I can get better and better at this. It's the same deal, and this is a win as we are in Colorado. Mm-hmm. But what's the next win we're going to go for? I think activists, you can get addicted to activism. So when the marijuana battle is almost over or petering out, it's what's next. So it's you guys being activists. What's next? I mean, what would you want to do?
Maybe animal rights. I think
I've always said
treat our animals better.
I've always said animal rights is probably the next big civil rights movement. After gay and LGBT rights,
LGBT rights are huge, obviously, and I think we are definitely moving towards that, and I think we're hitting that point of no return as well on that.
Yeah, I think it's going to go LGBT rights, so your love rights, who you have a right to love, and then I think food rights, because I think animal rights ties right into that, because you see this big groundswell about this GMO labeling and pesticides and people wanting organic food. And I think animal rights ties right into that because, you have a right to know what you're putting into your body.
Well,
I think that's part of the cannabis thing. You have a right to put something in your body as long as it's an informed decision, you know?
And I think you're going to, I think tied into that same side, because when you talk about animal rights, you're talking about, not wasting so much energy to create the food for our cows,
absolutely.
Especially, and everything.
Local
food, and then you're talking about our environment, and that's when you bring back hemp.
Yeah.
And you maybe, we start seeing more people going, okay, why isn't every house...
Stop the damage and then start healing it.
And why isn't every new house in Colorado built with solar panels right now? I get it's a big government idea.
Better idea. Why isn't every house now starting being built with hempcrete, which is fire resistant? And I guarantee you a lot fewer houses would be going up in flames right now if they were built in hempcrete.
Absolutely agree. We talked about that last time with our fires and everything too.
Yeah.
We just were like, God, we need to fix this issue big time. So I agree. The hemp is one of those. I hate to use the word panacea sometimes, but
I like that word.
It really kind of is.
Yeah.
It is a panacea. And any of you don't know what that means, look it up. PANACEA. It is a great word. Use it as often as you can find a way to use it.
People don't use big words enough.
They don't use big words. We get that comment in the magazine sometimes where people are like, "I really love your magazine, but sometimes I don't understand what you guys are talking about in your articles." And I'm like, get a dictionary.
You're a very verbose magazine with a giant lexicon.
Yeah. Ooh.
Oh, nice. See what I just laid down there?
Well, and that's one of the things is I'm like, look, we're not going to try to dumb down what we're writing about just so that, let's learn, read, get a thesaurus, figure it out. We do try to make it as simple.
Don't rely on your smartphone so much and use a map. That's my big thing.
I do use the thesaurus on my smartphone, actually.
I love the thesaurus. Don't get me wrong. I love the thesaurus.
The thesaurus. You can't say thesaurus with a lisp, can you? Thesaurus. That would suck.
We're just going to spend the next 3 minutes going thesaurus.
Yeah, I know. Well, we do have to end this one. First of all, Joe Magazine, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
First of all, I want to thank you for what you did. I think
I understand. I know Sam understands the gargantuan task that was before you to be the conservative outreach for Amendment 64 and the Marijuana Policy Project. And in my opinion, the results speak for themselves. You did an amazing job.
Oh, thank you very much.
So please keep up the good work and go out there and whip the Republicans' asses to shape.
We're working on it.
I know. We're obviously Sam's working on the Democrats, and they need to get their asses whipped into shape too. The Democrats need to get some cojones, in my opinion. But, and then Sam, always thank you for joining us.
Oh, of course. Well, I'll be here every week.
Yes,
now.
you will be everywhere. I'm so excited to have you here.
I
every
know,
week. It's
very
great.
excited.
I don't have to.
And
talk.
we'll have Joe back on. He'll be our special
We definitely
guest.
have to have you come back on.
It'd be great.
In the next couple weeks, we have. Quite a few people that are kind of be lined up for all the events that are going on over the summer for the marijuana industry. So we're going to have some folks from the clinic coming on soon to talk about the golf tournament to raise money for MS. We've had them on.
Is that
before.
during the Bongathon?
It's the same week. This is the
week.
the Bongathon weekend is like kind of a ridiculous weekend, which, I don't know if you're coming with me, but we're going to be at the Bongathon.
We're going to remember we're going to what did we call it?
Oh, we're not we're going to do the Cannabis Network. Or THC Network.
THCN. Yeah, THCN instead of ESPN.
Yeah, so we're going to do the THCN coverage, sports coverage of the Bongathon.
Can you get us like a little music thing that's like dur-dur-dur, but like...
Well, not that one.
Not that one, obviously.
It's going to be more like dirt.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, if we can get that in a cough, that would be perfect.
On the little Casio.
If you can cough in key, it would be great. We're just gonna have too much fun with that. I know we will.
Yes.
There you go. There it is. Nobody coughs like our producer Chris. So we'll be back same bat time next week. No pun intended on the bat time.
No. And I think Joe and I are going to head to the Vicente Cedarberg anniversary party.
I'm
if
jealous
anybody's
that I
out
won't
there
be able to
listening
make it to that party. I have a prior.
They've been around 5 years. They've been doing the good work, fighting the good fight for marijuana reform movement.
One of the best law firms for the marijuana movement in the country.
Yes.
Which really, when you say in Colorado, you also mean in the country and in the world.
They are the first nationwide law firm that specializes in marijuana.
And I like to think of them sometimes as like the heart of the movement. I know, but you hear like these stories about Brian Vicente, and he was out there during the 2008 convention, like defending people.
Yeah.
And with his dreadlocks, I heard. So I told him I need
Wait,
that
Brian
picture.
had dreadlocks?
He had dreadlocks, and I need to get a hold of this picture, and it's becoming
I totally got to see this
We're
picture
making
now.
T-shirts of it.
We should. We should totally make T-shirts.
I know.
Yeah, that's funny.
He denied it to me, but
and Christian Cedarberg, his partner, was played a huge role in implementing Amendment 64 of the state legislature.
He worked really hard at the Capitol as well, and so we're gonna go give them major props. So
those guys, Warren Edson, David Lane, and Rob Corey, have all changed my opinions of lawyers.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
They really have. Back before then, it was always like, they're the soul sucking guys, and they just take money $400 an hour. No, these guys, they used their education and their knowledge to help further this movement more than almost anybody else, and so they've done an amazing job.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And I'm please send a shout out to them that I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the party tonight.
Oh, it's all right.
But hey, next time.
I'll tell them you had better stuff to do, and
I really didn't have better stuff to do. I just have prior engagements that I can't get out of.
That's all right. You're busy.
It is what it is. But don't forget to go check out the newest issue of the Hemp Connoisseur magazine with our.
That's a collector's item.
It's a collector's item. The Reefer Madness cover. And in that is all the information on how to get connected to the Hemp Connoisseur Championship, or you can just go to thcmag.com or go to the Hemp Connoisseur Facebook page, and we'll be putting links on there for that because in my opinion, and I am biased, this is the best. This is the best cannabis championship the way it's designed as far as just judging the medicine. It's not a festival.
Can I be like your cannabis ring girl and like get out there in a bikini and just like hold the sign up and go round two?
Round two.
Just kidding. So
you know what we'll do? Seeing that it's
we'll get Joe in the bikini to do it.
No. What we'll do is we'll have 28 days of Sam.
Yes.
And so we'll have you with numbers 1 through 28, and right before every one of our judges wakes up that day to test their medicine, they can do I'm on day 2, and then it'll be Sam in a different bikini.
Or just different outfit. But I got to get into bikini shape, but... I don't mind. I don't mind buying 28 swimsuits because I'm a girl.
Because you're
awesome.
a girl and you love that.
I love shopping.
Yeah. We'll try to get it made out of hemp. We'll get
Hemp
it made out of hemp.
swimsuit. Is it? Wouldn't that be like weird and itchy? You think? I know
Hemp swimsuits?
Do they make?
Not at all.
I know. I've seen all the wonderful fabrics Envirotextiles has come up with. But I don't think any of them were really swimsuity. I guess I've seen really cute crocheted ones. Now I'm going off on a weird woman tangent.
You are. Yeah. That's
okay. That's all right.
That's all right. I'm surrounded by women in the magazine. In fact, I gave them a comment last issue. I was like, little too much estrogen in this issue, and we need a little bit more masculinity. So my wonderful layout designer, Caroline, called up this great hemp company, and they're sending me over hemp hiking shoes, men's hiking shoes, so I can review those because they reviewed all these women's products and baby products and all that stuff. And
very cool.
And I was like, we need some men's stuff in here. Give me some guy stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, the guy stuff is
I'm gonna
mostly.
get you some hemp pocket squares.
I know.
Yeah, pocket squares, exactly.
Yeah, there we go. Look good.
Yeah.
All right, now we're just rambling,
I
and
know.
we're going way over. So,
right.
once again, Joe Megacy, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Really
It was
appreciate
great. We had a
you.
great time.
Great radio voice, by the way.
Thank you.
I know. Sexy.
And then, as always, the lovely
lovely.
Samantha Walsh.
Hi.
And, of course, I'm David Madalena. Thanks for listening to Hemp Connoisseur Radio. Peace, love, and hempiness.